Thank you. Namaste, Bobby. Oh, yeah.
नमस्कार जी
क्या राम राम सा राम राम कैसे हैं ये डायमंड लगा क्या ये
Just
I can't find my name
We have the extra one.
So how
Was the card and
हाय कुमार हाउ आर यू
Yeah, that's it. Oh,
गुड टू सी यू
okay.
कुमार एंड रेशमा के में देखना ना
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to have all of you here today. Request rest of the people who are outside, kindly please take a seat so we can start. Thank you very much. We do have many very intelligent speakers here today, so I'm not going to bore you with the whole lot. But let me just start off by saying thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Ambassador to India, Governor, thank you very much for being here. I would request all of you to kindly please take your seats. So we will please start. Thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Ravi Sehgal to come and say a few words and welcome all of you here. Thank you.
You know, my father used to say, money doesn't grow on trees, but it grows when we plant these seed of innovation and entrepreneurship. Namaskar, good evening and Sawadee Krap. On behalf of India-Thai Chamber of Commerce, it's my pleasure to welcome you all on this special event where we are hosting the Indian Ambassador to Thailand, His Excellency, Mr. Nagesh Singh. We humbly acknowledge and deeply appreciate the generous investment of time and effort His Excellency has extended to us with his invaluable presence. His Excellency embodies a remarkable sense of dignity and honor which is evident in every aspect of his conduct. We recognize and applaud his dedication and commitment towards enhancing the bilateral ties between India and Thailand. It's always a pleasure welcoming my good friend, Dr. Chachat Satipon, Governor of Bangkok. Sawadee Krap. Okay, we are missing few of the VIPs. Mr. Pyro Buripha Chaisiri, he just left due to some urgent meeting. We have Kun Song Sang Patawanit from Thai Chamber of Commerce and Board of Trade. Also joining us, the presidents and the members of Joint Foreign Chamber of Commerce and the editor of Bangkok Post, Kun Sonrak Bunjapani. Honorable guests, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, our event is focused on bringing together the most innovative and forward-thinking individuals and companies from across the industries. My sincere thanks to Motilal Oswal Group for helping us to organize this event, and to all the panelists for joining this high-powered event. Thank you, Kun Samir, for taking the initiative. Today's theme is India's Golden Decade, which is the period of prosperity and growth that India is poised to experience in next few years. As we embark on this exciting journey, we must remember that our country has a rich history and bright future. We are the nation of diverse cultures, languages, and traditions, and we have a lot to be proud of. As Swami Vivekananda ji once said, "Arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached." Let us take inspirations from these words and strive towards better future of ourselves and our nation. Although India has emerged as a flourishing hub of innovation and entrepreneurship, boosting a thriving startup ecosystem that has gained global recognition. Moreover, the Indian demographic dividend has played a pivotal role in country's economic growth. In conclusion, I would like to quote the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world. Be the change you wish to see in the world. So, Let us be the change that we want to see in India. And let's work together making our golden decade a reality. Thank you.
We would now like to invite dear Ambassador, His Excellency Nagesh Ji, to kindly come up and say a few words to us.
When you invite a diplomat and then you ask him to say a few words, you are really underestimating our capacity to talk. But I'll be lenient with the crowd here today. Good evening, namaskar, swadikap. His Excellency Dr. Chachat Sitipant, the Honorable Governor of Bangkok and a dear friend of India, the Indo-Thai community, President Ravi Sehgal, incoming President Dhanuka ji, a house full of distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to ITCC for inviting me. I have prepared a speech, but normally I don't like reading because it makes me a bit hesitant when I read. So I'll be saying some things, some extempore, some of the facts which I've jotted down because I just wanted to throw out some of the facts, figures, and ideas about what's happening in India across the Bay of Bengal from this beautiful country. Thank you for inviting me. It is a pleasure being here today and getting this opportunity to listen to such an accomplished group of panelists on the golden decade for India, as it has been termed. I compliment ITCC for this excellent initiative, and I also thank President Ravi Sehgal for his leadership of the ITCC for the past year. Friends, India's engagement with the world designed to meet the needs of an increased inflow of capital, technology, ideas, and innovation for our development and our re-emergence as one of the leading economies of the world has intensified like never before. A strong and stable government committed to domestic reforms has been undertaking widespread economic reforms despite the challenges posed by a large, diverse, and noisy democracy like ours. Let me give you an overview of the Indian economy to reassure you about what is being witnessed by the world and what will also increasingly benefit not just India, but the region and beyond. And I'm talking about the growth, the Indian growth story. Some of the things I'll say, I know my success, the people who are going to follow me when they're going to speak, they're going to, elaborate further on that. So I'll try and be brief on those areas. It is also important to lay out this India story because in the din of half-baked media reports or social media-based ignorance, peddled as news or information, we tend to miss out on the real picture. Friends, India has been among the fastest growing economies in the world for the last 2 decades. Post-COVID period, we have bounced back and emerged again as the fastest growing large economy with a likely growth rate of somewhere between 6 to 7% this year. IMF says it's about 5.9% now. So that's the other request I have. If I'm rounding up figures, please don't hold me accountable for the decimals which I might be fudging up and down. And I'll be doing it just for the convenience of understanding rather than being very precise. IMF and other relevant entities have referred to India as the bright spot in global economy, which is reeling under the headwinds of the geopolitical crises like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the tensions in the Taiwan Straits, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the related global food and energy inflation. Despite the aforementioned global challenges and the threats of recession in advanced economies, India's total exports have touched a record $770 billion in 2022-23. Merchandise exports were at about $447 billion and services exports touched $322 billion. Both are at their annual record level. Exports are likely to touch $1 trillion by 2030. And this I am mentioning because, there are global headwinds, there's a threat of global recession. Despite that, Indian economy is growing. Despite the COVID pandemic-related slowdown in the global economy, India received a foreign direct investment of $84 billion approximately during the financial year 21-22. Steps taken by the government during the last 8 years have borne fruit, as is evident from the ever-increasing volumes of FDI inflow being received into the country. Our 30 million strong diaspora, of which some of you are very distinguished members, contributes immensely to the Indian economy. As an example, with $100 billion approximately in 2022, India was the top remittance recipient, way ahead of China and Mexico. It's $100 billion. First time anywhere in any country, $100 billion have come in just from overseas Indians sending money back to the country. Last year, India overtook the United Kingdom to become the 5th largest economy in the world. According to a Morgan Stanley report, which I oft quote because it helps me strengthen my argument, this was entitled "Why This Is India's Decade," and you can link it to the current topic. This report was released last year. It says that India's GDP is set to double from the current $3.4 trillion to $8.5 trillion over the next decade, making it the 3rd largest economy by 2027 behind United States and China. India will account for 20% of total global growth during this period, adding more than $400 to $500 billion a year to its economy. In the context I want to put forward before you that the Thai economy is about $530 odd billion. India will be adding a $500 billion every year to its economy going forward. India will contribute about 28% of Asian growth and about, as I mentioned, 22% of global GDP growth. According to the World Economic Forum, India is poised to become the 3rd largest consumer market behind, again, United States and China, and consumer spending in India is expected to grow from $1.5 trillion at the present state to nearly $6 trillion by 2030. So this is a consumer market of $6 trillion by 2030, and great opportunities for Thai businesses, even if they want to sell their products or invest in our country. India will also become the 3rd largest stock market by 2030 with an expected market capitalization of $11 trillion, again behind United States and China. The report also talked about the 4 reasons for India's rapid growth: demographics, digitalization, decarbonization, and deglobalization. And I'll briefly touch on all these figures just to highlight how these are impacting India's growth story. Demographics, for example, we are a country of 1.3 billion people. We are 1/6 of humanity, and I jokingly repeat it, and some people must have heard it very often from me, that statistically every 6th person you're going to run into in the world is going to be an Indian. So there's no getting away from us. And this is for my foreign guests here. So get to know us well because, we are coming. In 2020, there were about 900 million people in India in the working age group of 15 to 64, which is expected to expand by another 100 million by 2030. This implies that a whopping 25% of the incremental global workforce over the next decade will come from India. The world is aging. We are very young. So we'll be the human resources bank of the world. I also acknowledge it will be a challenge for India to provide productive employment to all the teeming millions which I'm talking about. So this demographic dividend has to be realized, but our government is cognizant of it and we are working towards it. India already has the 3rd largest scientific and technical manpower in the world, with a huge scientific and technological infrastructure of 1,000+ universities, deemed universities, 127 odd institutes of national importance, and almost 40,000 colleges. And why I say this is feeding into our very advanced space program, our nuclear program, our technology sector, etc. India has an advanced information technology and IT-enabled industry, which is considered one of the best in the world. We are considered the world's office and a leader in services industry. India's IT sector generated a revenue of around $245 billion last year. And when I say last year, in India, we follow a financial year from March to April. And so this is about 22-23. With exports of IT and IT services expected to touch around $194 billion. According to NASSCOM, India's body which represents the IT industry, annual revenue is expected to touch $500 billion by 2030. I'm talking about the Indian IT sector. The Indian IT sector employs about 5.4 million people and has amongst the 2nd and the 3rd largest pool of IT manpower, whether it's in artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud professionals, etc. As mentioned by my predecessor, India is the third biggest startup hub in the world with over 90,000 startups, including 107 unicorns, and valuations of these, the Indian startups are touching about $350 billion. Next, I want to talk about the global capability centers, because it's not just, the IT services. India has today become the hub for what we call the global capability centers. These centers are centers of excellence, which are around 1,500 of them at the last count, 1,500 plus. These are centers which are focused on, building engineering R&D. They are also looking at, sectors like banking, financial services, insurance, fast-moving consumer goods, retail, and engineering services. These centers were initially established to use economies of scale and low labor cost in India. But now they are in what we call them third-generation GCCs. First, it was about productivity, now building enterprise capabilities, and the third piece is now on transformation, work focused on middle and front offices. India has been described as a global capability center capital with 50% share of the global GCC markets. They generate about $40 billion in revenue, employ about 1.3 million engineers, and this revenue is supposed to go up to 60 to 85 billion. And the remarkable thing is that almost all Fortune 500 companies are working through their centers in India for engineering research and development. It's not, what used to be in the past, the call centers where, you call and get things done. But cutting edge research is happening for all major companies around the world. Next, I want to mention about India's internet technology, because I mentioned demographics, I've given you the number of people around in India in terms of our population, our workforce. Next is our digitalization which is taking place. At present, there are about 700 million active internet users in India, around 350 million from rural India and 340 million in urban India. It is estimated that by 2025, there'll be 900 million people in India using internet. About 350 million people in India use online transactions, including e-commerce and digital payments. India has around 1.2 billion mobile subscribers. I know I'm throwing a lot of figures on you, so please excuse me at that. I'm trying to practice a bit of shock and awe to tell you the scale of what's happening, in my country. 40% of all digital transactions in the world originated in India. Digital payment transactions in India last year were numbered at 88 billion. 88 billion. And in this financial year, that is 2022-23, till 31st December, they have touched about 91 billion. So we have another 3 million, we have to count what happened between January and March. This digitalization is transforming our economy through financial inclusion, promoting market efficiencies, easier access to credit, reducing corruption, enhancing ease of doing business, etc., including direct benefit transfers for greater social exclusion. Energy is the next thing. It's key to development. In India, we had great challenges in the past decades about energy, but the transformation which is taking place in the energy sector, especially in clean technologies, the amount of investment, it is expected that between now and 2030, India will be investing about $500 billion in clean technologies. Already, we have made commitments that by 2030, 50% of our electricity requirement will be met from renewable energies. Prime Minister Modi has announced more ambitious targets for 2030, including installing 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, reducing the emissions intensity of its economy by 45% and reducing billion tons, carbon emissions by 1 billion tons. India has already invested about $75 billion in renewable energy in the past 8 years. Current capacity is about 169 gigawatts. And when it started in 2014, we were all very skeptical whether because the target was around 220 gigawatts, but we have achieved a lot, and it's expected that by 2030, we will touch 500 gigawatts of renewables. A transition to clean energy, again, is a huge opportunity, not just for India, but for businesses abroad. Infrastructure is another area. We are spending about $1 trillion between now and 2030 in infrastructure in ports, highways, railways, civil aviation, new airports are coming in. I mean, these are facts and figures. I mean, I have much more to say, but I think, time is short. So what I'm trying to, summarize is that, some of these facts and figures would try and impress you that a huge experiment in human history is happening in your neighborhood, which is in India, a country of 1.3 billion people, mired in every kind of fault lines from race, religion, caste, etc., etc. Languages, I mean, we have 21 languages in India, I don't know how many thousand dialects. And when I say languages, these are, these are 2,000, 2,500-year-old languages with their own script and grammar. Despite these diversity and challenges, and that too in a democratic framework. I mean, some of the political leaders will understand the political diversity of India. The last count on the Election Commission of India's website was that there are about 1,600 political parties in India. 900 million people go to, they are registered voters. And in the last elections in 2019, 640 million odd voters went and voted, So despite the challenges of our diversity in a democratic framework, we are moving ahead without being kind of a burden on anyone else. But what is important today is that people around our country, in India and in our neighborhood, and Thailand is our extended neighborhood, we have to work together and benefit each other, because no one can grow till everyone around us grow. Instability in any part of the world, or lack of progress in any part of the world, is not good for any country. So I hope that, I'll try to make some sense here. I had much more to say, but I realized I was going ahead with time. That's why I said never call a diplomat to speak. I'll stop here, and I look forward to listening to our distinguished colleagues. Some of the things I have skipped because I'm sure they are the ones who are going to talk about. But my appeal is that all of us who are here, Indians, Indo-Thais, friends of India, let's all get together and see how we can work together and promote a very substantive Indo-Thai economic and commercial relationship, which I'm convinced will not just be good for India and Thailand, but I think for the region around us. So thank you once again. Thank you for your patience and for bearing me this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I love the passion with which you talk about India. It's amazing. Thank you very much. For our next speaker, I'd like to invite Mr. Ashish Shankar from Motilal Oswal Group. He's their CEO. Motilal Oswal is one of the biggest companies of its kind in India, and he'll probably tell you a little bit more about that. But Ashish will talk to you more about what is happening in India and how they see India as a whole. Ashish, it's all yours.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, a big thank you to ITCC for getting this evening organized. And my regards to His Excellency Nagesh Singh, to the Governor of Bangkok, and the dignitaries from various chambers of commerce present here, and all the businessmen. It's indeed a pleasure to be here and speaking about India, and I think His Excellency has already laid the ground and made my job easier. So what I'm going to do is really build on the story that he has narrated to you, and from our point of view, talk to you more about what are the opportunities, given the size of the economy, given the vibrancy that we are witnessing currently. What is in it for all of you as investors, as businessmen, as entrepreneurs, and as professionals? So this is our little bit about our group. I mean, we have about $25 billion under advisory. We have close to 5.3 million customers. We are a listed enterprise. Our market cap was close to $3 billion. And we have a large base of retail customers, close to 5 million, and we manage close to about $25 billion under custody. So that's the size of our group. We are a integrated financial services group with 7 businesses. We help our clients raise money, invest the money, and we also talk to global institutions on how they should be navigating the Indian capital markets. So India, like His Excellency spoke, has a compounded past, and we strongly believe it has a compounded future. Now, compounding is not intuitive. The straight mathematics is very intuitive, but compounding is not intuitive. When I ask somebody, let's say if you grow at 15% for 5 years, the answer is very simple. You will double your money. But when I ask somebody, if you grow at 15% for 50 years, then people start struggling to tell the answer. Now, in 50 years, if you grow at 15%, it basically becomes 1,000 times your initial capital, right? And I'm just correlating this to one of the most famous investors in the world, Warren Buffett, who's worth billions of dollars now. But come to think about it, when he was 64 years of age, he touched $1 billion of net worth, right? So that's how compounding works. And why I'm saying this is India is a story of compounding. And one caveat, prediction is dangerous, especially of the future. So please take whatever I'm saying with a pinch of salt. Now, what is the compounded past for India? India is massive. I think the ambassador has laid down the scale that India is operating at. India moves slowly, but it moves surely and wisely. 75 years of democracy, we've seen 100x rise in GDP, currently at close to $3.5 trillion. We've seen 500x in per capita income, currently at $2,300. 500x rise in total exports. Growth rate last financial year was 8.7%. We are the 5th largest economy, 2nd largest working population. And, a lot of these numbers has been spoken about in the earlier speech. But what is at play underlying? What is at play is the growth rate. India is basically grown at 9%, and this is, believe me, this is dollar growth. Okay, this is dollar GDP growth. India has grown at 9% per annum in the last 25 years. What that has done is taken India's GDP from $500 billion to close to $3.5 trillion today. In the same period, the world GDP has compounded at a much smaller pace. So India's share in the world GDP has really grown during this period. And this is the story that we see unfolding over the next few years as well. So we've improved from 1.3% of global GDP to close to 3.3% by the last financial year. Now, this is a common comparison. Everybody asks us, how do you stack up as in relation to China? Now, India is basically where China was somewhere in 2006. We are at $3.3 trillion. China is at $17.5 trillion. And as all of you know, growth rates in China are slowing down. So if we can grow even at a couple of percentage faster than China, then the catch-up can be very fast over the next 10-15 years. This is the compounded growth that India has witnessed. Whether it is in GDP, we've grown at 9% dollar GDP growth. Our corporate profits, the listed companies in India, it has one of the most vibrant capital markets. The profits of listed companies over the last 25 years has grown at 17% per annum. There are very few markets globally where you've seen corporate profit growth at greater than 15% for such a long period. Our market cap growth in the same period has grown at 18%. Now, mind you, this 18% is rupee growth, but if you take off 4% rupee depreciation, dollar growth in market capitalization is still 14%. Very few capital markets can boast of a 25-year compounding of dollar 14%. And that is the Nifty, which is the large cap index, has grown at close to 12% in the same period. Now, what is the advantage? A lot of these points have been made by His Excellency, but I just thought, let me put it on one slide. The real forces which are coming together, and which is why we strongly believe that we are staring at India's golden decade. The first, we are the largest democracy. It's a well-established federal structure. One nation idea, the JAM Trinity. What is the JAM Trinity? Integrating the entire country on one identity, which is Aadhaar, and linking it to the mobile phones, and ensuring that most Indians have bank accounts. A lot of this has happened in the last 5 years. Now, this is a very powerful force because a large population in the country has come into the organized fold when it comes to financial services as well as lending. Similarly, young working population, 40% below 20, 85% below 50. Now, this is a very powerful force. The fifth force, our forex reserves are today close to $600 billion, thanks to the strong growth in merchandise exports as well as services exports. Inflation has been extremely steady. I mean, today the world is worried about inflation, and the last inflation print that we've seen has been below 6% for India. And we do believe that inflation will be very, very steady and benign going forward. Stable government, and you have rising retail and domestic participation. Just to give you a sense of this participation in capital markets, if you just rewind 4 years back to 2019, there were 300 million trading accounts in India, okay? 30 million trading accounts in India. Now, over the last 4 years, this has gone to 100 million. From 30 million, it's gone to 100 million. The participation in Indian capital markets has multiplied 3.5x. And that's one of the reasons last year, most of the foreign institutional investors have withdrawn money from Indian capital markets, but the markets have not fallen much because you're seeing the rise of the Indian investor, and the monthly flows into the Indian stock markets are greater than $3 billion, and it's growing at a very, very steady clip. So domestic savings pool is going to become a powerful force to ensure that we achieve our dreams of creating world-class infrastructure and creating a very strong economy. I'm going to skip some of the slides because some of the points have already been covered. Now, this is a very, very powerful story, and I'll just put some context to this story. At the turn of the century, the total software exports out of India was just $4 billion. This year, the number will be closer to $190 billion, right? And to put this in context, in 2013, right, our total oil imports, oil is the biggest import for India as a country. The total oil imports was about $130 billion. And in 2013, the total software exports out of India was $74 billion. So we were net deficit by about $56 billion. And if you remember, 2013 was the time when Federal Reserve was trying to raise rates and is now famously known as the taper tantrum. And most emerging market currencies depreciated. And we had to actually give special incentives for people to come and buy rupee into India to stabilize the currency. Today, the total software exports is $190 billion and the total oil imports is still close to $140 billion. So we are net surplus if you actually deduct the total oil imports compared to the software exports. So as a country, I think our external account is extremely stable. So combined with $600 billion of reserves, our view is that rupee will depreciate at a much slower rate going forward. I'm saying this because this is always a concern when foreign investors come and invest in India, because 4% of your return is taken away by the currency. But my guess, if I have to guess, over the next 10 years, the pace of depreciation in the rupee will be much, much slower. And I do believe there'll come a point when rupee will actually appreciate. People don't remember, there was a period between 2000 to 2010, and you can go and check, rupee did not depreciate at all. In fact, there were periods during that decade where rupee actually appreciated. And that kind of a period can come in the next 10 years. I spoke about all of this. Yeah. So expectations from the government, very simple, and I think what the government is also trying to do is minimal interference in business. Most of the sectors have opened up and you have a very, very thriving private sector. I mean, if you look at the diversity in sectors in India, I mean the number of sectors, because if you go to many countries, you'll find 2 or 3 sectors which dominate the entire economy. But today, India has a very vibrant sectoral diversity. We have some of the best banks in the world. We have some of the best software services in the world. We have some of the best pharma companies in the world. We have some of the best chemical companies in the world. We have some of the best infrastructure companies in the world. So for you as an investor or as a businessman, when you come to India, it's really a buffet that you can invest in. A lot of people ask me, which sectors are you bullish on? And actually, if I think about it, it's a buffet. There are multiple areas of excellence, and it really depends on where you think your expertise lies. Retail participation, this is what I was talking about. I mean, if you see the CAGR in terms of the broking accounts, we've gone from 41 million to straight to 100 million. And the average daily turnover, just hold your breath, has gone up 134% in the Indian stock markets. And we do 100 trillion rupees of turnover on a single day. Our firm does 3 trillion out of it on a single day. That's the scale of operations that you see in the capital markets. So why do I believe this is India's golden decade? Now, this was a report recently put out by Bloomberg. If you see, the growth expectations for India are 5.9% in 2023. This is the best growth rate in the world. Now, you look at the right-hand side of this slide, the recession probability globally is listed down in the slide. In India, the possibility of recession is 0. And we expect the economy to grow at 6.5 to 7%. And that's one of the reasons India offers such a compelling case for investors. Now, why has this happened? Obviously, this has not happened overnight, right? There is a certain design, there is a certain structure to this entire optimism. What has happened over the last 5-6 years as the world was growing and as COVID hit the world, India has been cleaning up sector after sector. And there are multiple reforms and regulations which have been put in place. And I'm just going to talk about 2 or 3 of them which I believe will have a very high impact on the next decade. So first is the cleanup of the banking sector, the aggressive bad loan recognition in the Indian banking sector. And I'll just give you a perspective. In the last 5-6 years, the Indian banking sector has written off 1 year of corporate profits. 1 year of corporate profits, which is equivalent to close to $60 to $70 billion. $60 to $70 billion of bad loans have been written off from Indian bank balance sheets, and it has been recapitalized. So the Indian banking sector is in the best health ever that I have seen in my 30 years of investing experience in India. The second big development is the centralized taxation system called GST. The tax buoyancy is the highest ever today. I mean, we collect about 1.5 trillion rupees of taxes every month. Now, this allows the government to invest aggressively in infrastructure and build capacity so that it lays the foundation for future growth. The third big change is the change in the real estate sector. India is a very vibrant and large real estate sector, and Indians love their real estate, right? Even Indians overseas, when they come to India, they love to buy real estate in their own cities or places they come from. Now, this was a very unorganized market, right? I mean, earlier you would go to a project, you would put in your money, and you would not know when the delivery of the house will happen. It may take 10 years, it may take 15 years. Now, the Real Estate Regulation Act was passed about 5-6 years back. This is a state subject, but I'm happy to say that most states have adopted this act. So today, every project, every real estate project in India is governed by this act. So if you buy a property in India, you can be rest assured it will be delivered in the promised time. So if there were 70,000 developers in India, today it's consolidated to below 10,000. And a lot of corporates are now looking at investing aggressively in the real estate sector. And I do believe this will drive the private capex side of the equation in the GDP. A lot of Indians have already started buying homes. The balance sheets of real estate developers are the best ever in the last 3 decades. And the last part is the incentives that the government has rolled out to ensure the corporate sector can invest more into building capacity. They did a corporate tax cut, so the tax structure is very, very competitive now in India. I mean, they brought down the taxes from 30% plus to now close to 22%. Similarly, if you look at some of the PLI schemes that have been given, they've been given to support the manufacturing sector. I mean, the services story, the services success is very well known. But we do believe that the next 5-6 years we'll see the emergence of the manufacturing sector in India. And many, many sectors are poised very well to do this. Now, what does that mean in terms of markets? I know a lot of you are also investors and you want to know what is in it for you if you invest in India today. Now, I'm just looking at certain other countries who went through the same journey of $2.5 trillion to $6 trillion, which is what we are looking to travel in this decade. So if you look at the US took about 12 years to do this journey. From 78 to 1990, they went to $6 trillion GDP. China went in 5 years. They grew much faster. I reckon, my guess is India will do it somewhere in between, maybe 7 to 8 years we will cover this journey. But what really happens is this journey of $2.5 trillion to $6 trillion or $2,200 per capita to let's say $5,500 per capita is a huge wealth creation opportunity for investors. The US stock markets in the same periods became 6x or gave 17% CAGR. The Shanghai stock market became 4x, giving 31% CAGR. Now it's anybody's guess what kind of returns you can expect from the Indian capital markets. My guess is it will be somewhere in between. It could be somewhere in between, and that's really the opportunity in front of all of you from a capital market point of view. Now this is the story of India. Compounded past, compounded future. So what is happening is we took 60 years to hit $1 trillion GDP. 60 years, right? Now because of compounding, the next trillion actually happened in close to 7 years. And the subsequent trillion we thought will happen in 4 years, but because of COVID, it got delayed by 2 years. It happened in FY22. Now just look at the story unfolding in front of your eyes. We will add a Netherlands every 3-4 years, right? And after 2030, we will add a Spain every year, right? So that's the kind of wealth creation that you're staring at, right? And obviously this wealth creation comes with opportunity for many industry. Now, the opportunity is basically what happens is when you're $1,000 per capita country, right, or a poor country, 95% of your spending, household spending, goes into essentials. And the households have very little spending available for discretionary expenditure, holidays, cars, or houses. But the moment you double your GDP to 2,000 or 2,000 goes to 4,000, the per capita is doubling. But the discretionary expenditure goes up by 10 to 12x. 10 to 12x. So you have a discretionary boom coming in front of you in India, and that's really the opportunity. So if you look at the consumption share of the economy in 2012 was about $1 trillion. Today it's about 1.8. You're staring at a $4.5 trillion consumption economy. So it's a massive opportunity for investors to make money through companies which will capitalize this opportunity. Big opportunity for entrepreneurs who want to sell their goods and services in India, and a big opportunity for people to set up capacities to supply for this growth. And across industries, whether it's retail, whether it is leisure, hotels, massive opportunity this is going to bring up. Now, coming to the manufacturing part, right? We do believe in this decade, you will see merchandise exports grow to close to $1.2 trillion. And being investors in India, I mean, we run private equity portfolios as well as listed portfolios. And I can tell you firsthand from what we hear from entrepreneurs, all of them are looking to set up capacities in the next 2 years. All of them. So the seeds of growth have already been sown. I know there are a lot of cynics when it comes to manufacturing in India, but I can tell you firsthand from what we see in India that every company we talk to is setting up capacity. I mean, Apple now exports 7% of its phones from India, which was zero few years back. Company after company, there's a company in our portfolio, listed company, which exports 35% of its capacity. They are in specialty chemicals. 35% of their capacity is exported to China. Okay? And this China plus one opportunity, or Germany plus one now, is a massive capex opportunity for India, right? Even if we can capture a fraction of this opportunity, I think you will be surprised with the numbers. This $1.1 trillion could be much higher. And this is what will support the growth, right? Ultimately, you need capital. I know that there will be a lot of foreign capital which will come our way, but there is a huge amount of domestic capital which needs to be harnessed. Now, I'll just give you a sense of the numbers. The last 25 years, the total savings in India was about $12 trillion, right? $12 trillion Indians saved. Now, in the next 25 years, hold your breath, Indians are going to save $100 trillion. So it's a great opportunity for financial services. It's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to harness this capital and deploy it meaningfully. Lastly, but not the least, slowly India is becoming very relevant for the startup ecosystem globally. If you look at India, I mean, we have contributed 1 out of 10 unicorns globally. We have 107 of them with a total valuation of $341 billion. There are now centers of excellence. Bangalore is obviously leading the way, but you have Powai in Bombay, you have Gurgaon in Delhi, and you have Hyderabad, which is coming up very, very rapidly. If you see the VC investments, India has grown the fastest. I mean, we've grown at about 285% compared to a lot of the other countries where VC investments have actually slowed down. So it's a big opportunity for people who are in startups, not just to deploy money, but also to harness the talent in India. Now, what can delay this growth but not derail is inflation. If, let's say, suddenly inflation spikes, but I think that fear is behind us now. Globally, what we are seeing is economy slowing down. There could be global shocks along the way. Even last 25 years, we've had global shocks, but we've grown at 9%. Black swan events like COVID and political risks. These are some of the risks, but my view is this can only delay, but not derail the India story. So, lastly, concluding, watch out for India over the next decade, but more than the decade, over the next 25 years, because we are 75 years old as an independent country. We're going to hit our century over the next 25 years, and Prime Minister Modi has coined this as the Amrit Kal, right? So we are talking about the golden decade, but he's saying this 25 years will be the Amrit Kal, probably the best period for India. And basically, we are moving from a poor nation to a prosperous nation, and this has a lot of implications for economy, how the economy is managed, and the kind of opportunities it will throw up for all of you. India is the ultimate next $1 trillion opportunity, and the last thought is don't bet against India. We are coming. So with that, thank you very much for your patient ears, and we can move on to the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There was a lot of information on that presentation, and I'm sure some of you guys might want to have a look at it again. So if you're interested in getting a copy of the presentation, kindly do just send us an email, the same one which you registered by, and we'll send the copy of the presentation to you, right? Secondly, there was something interesting that he said. He used the word Germany +1. And I suddenly got remembered about Germany, and if somebody can link between Germany and the Oscar award that we got, what do you figure out was the connection there? Yes, Natu Natu. The German ambassador in India, he actually did a perfect Natu Natu dance. So, amazing. But for our foreign guests who may not know, on the social side, we're talking a lot of business, but on the social side, in the recent Oscars, India was awarded the best song. There's a song known as Natu Natu. Please do have a look at it. The next guest we have, unfortunately, was not able to join us in person. So we're going to have him connect via conference call, via Zoom.
Right now, as Sam said, what I'm doing is I look after some of the technology platforms that power the IPO. Just in the context right now, Geo, which is something that I work for, I look after business with Geo advertising. We had 2.4 million people watch the match streaming concurrently last night. In context, that's the number 2 amount of people streaming ever in the world. It's an interesting kind of scale that you guys are doing that. We were doing it last night. The day before Netflix was to stream an hour of the video when it crashed, so it's pretty hard to do. But what I thought I would do is spend some time talking about where briefly India has gone, what we are seeing today, and close to the next 10 years, more about a perspective. Thinking of everything. If that helps. Sound make sense? Okay, let me just get started. I've already quite well talked about what has changed, where we are today, and where the opportunities in the future. I think some really messing the numbers, but if you looked 20 odd years ago, the average income has grown over the last 20 years in dollar terms to get purchasing power, exports have gone up by 10x, and infrastructure, which has been a big pain in India, has massively improved. Given the amount of time, I'm not going to go into detail, but I will talk about 2 or 3 things that have actually kind of changed rapidly. I think one is that the Indian economy became formalized. There was always a huge sense of a black economy, but a few years ago, we started formalizing the economy. We started paying away from cash with an electronic system, and on a year-on-year basis, the government being able to show and spend money for the economy at the business year. The company that I work for over the last 5 years, 6 years ago, called Jio, which is the telecom arm of the Reliance business. I mean, some of you may know, some of you may not know, but I'll talk about it anyway. It changed the Indian economy fairly rapidly. In 2016 when we launched, India had one of the slowest internet, one of the most expensive in US level pricing, about $6 per gigabyte of data, and about 350 million people on the internet. And in 6 years, we now have 7 million people on the internet, and we now have the cheapest and fastest data consumption in the world. So we went from 0 to 420 million paying customers, but the number 2 in the world. This business didn't exist in 2015, and the quarter's revenue, quarter revenue is in north of $3 billion a year, and we took a valuation, an entire valuation, and it was about $120 billion. We have $20 billion worth of investment from Alphabet, from Meta, from some of the biggest private equity companies, from the government funds in the world, and they took an investment stake in us about 2 years ago. So from a company that didn't exist or just entered the telco space about 6 years ago now, we are now, the Jio business that I'm part of, now runs at about a $15 billion run rate in 6 years, with 400 plus customers. Okay. But it's not about Jio, but I thought what's interesting is, if you actually look at the analysis, opening up a digital platform actually opened up a lot of interesting things for India. This is an analysis of how many VCs and how many billion-dollar businesses or digital unicorns were launched in the 4 or 5 years after Jio's launch, from 16 to 21. And you can see that there are businesses that were launched in the e-commerce space, in the data analytics space, in 2010, 11, 12. So then all of a sudden we went from basically an average usage of about 400 megabytes of data a month to about 17 to 20 gigabytes of data a month. And in 2021, we started to have data. We are north of 41 unicorns and invested in. And I think one of the things we talk about, and I worked with one of these unicorns before I joined Jio, was that we built our business on the back of a large digital platform, where basically data went from being very, and connectivity went from being very expensive to be hoarded, cared about, insights on something you just give away for free. And all of a sudden, everything from food delivery, used car sales, networks, analytics, people started building businesses on the back of that. And that's what we unleashed over the last 4 or 5 years. I think the big thing that the government did was create a digital payment network that anybody could use and is able to be used for transactions as low as 10 rupees or 5 rupees or even 2 rupees. And now within 4 or 5 years of launching, that's about $1.7 trillion of annualized transactions that we see, with $76 billion there. And that basically meant that all of a sudden data became pretty much inexpensive. Okay, infrastructure became pretty interesting. People don't use credit cards anymore, so it's very similar to the Chinese experience. Okay. And big businesses kind of grew up. And just in the interest of time. But you suddenly have like this interesting confluence of activities where you had infrastructure being built, you had the right government policies coming in, and then you had a very strong digital network being created. And, you know, along with the coupled strengths where India sits, I think it's a pretty interesting opportunity today. And, you know, when I look at where India is today, I actually have a few kind of thoughts, and these are more like perspectives than facts, just take it for what it's worth. I think one thing is very clear is that India is pretty much open to the world. You know, whether you have Facebook, Google, Amazon coming in. Yesterday, the company that I'm part of also had a very large retail arm. We opened up Apple's first store in India, in Mumbai yesterday. We had the CEO, Tim, come in and open up his first store in a mall that we run called the Geo World Mall. And that's been an interesting experience, you know, over the last 5 years. So, you know, when you go to China and spend some time there, and when you go to other markets, there's generally a play of, there's a local champion. But I think in India, I see that there are local startups and there are actually quite a lot of local competition, which means that when you're competing, you have to compete with the best of the world. And, you know, I think you guys have seen this all before. It's a contrast, it's a very confusing thing. You know, people find it easier to order online clothes than to get water. And the scale is always interesting. And you kind of see this, right? There's, you know, people within the streets and you see the elevators in the city to take that. But it's a very interesting opportunity to start thinking about India as, it's a confusing place. I've had people come to me and say, is it rich, is it poor, is it developing country? I think the answer to everything is yes, it's all of those things. It's a fragmented. This is the South African market. It's about 25% the size of the US market, but actually the top 5 players in the US have about 30% share. In India, it's less than 5%. And by organized, which is basically these large companies or consolidated pay taxes, have electronic billing systems, it's less than 15%. Whereas in the US, for example, it's 85%, which means that there's a lot of opportunity here. Things are changing at a very rapid rate. It's actually an interesting perspective, but I actually view this as India, a very low trust society. What does that mean? You know, people respect, you know, relationships. People respect points of view. But you know, the thing I would say is nearly 30% of all advertising in India has a celebrity on it. So what that means is that people are always trying to build trust. You know, luckily we have legal forms, but it takes some time. But it's a very interesting experience when you're actually building a society and a capital which is based upon, you know, low trust. I mean, I started with my colleagues in my graduate multinational, and in Germany, bills come the day before, where I think it's going to be a lot of time, and they make sure that you get paid on time. The systems are there. But you know, that is something that just really makes things easier, which I think is interesting. It's not always perfect. But I think what India does have is an incredible amount of soft power. I logged on, I saw some talking about like but like usually that aside, I don't see anybody. Everyone knows what Bollywood is. Everyone knows about music. Everyone knows about, you know, the movies that we make, and it's completely honest. It's completely different when, you know, I think a large part of the world right now thinks about content in a very Western framework. Movies, big franchise movies, stories, etc. I think India has been able to build a huge amount of content and stories that travel the world now, and are actually pretty interesting and can hold their own against the rest of Bollywood on, you know, 1/10 or 1/5, 1/20 of the budget. Okay. and it can cover the world, whether in Thailand, whether in Southeast Asia. It's pretty interesting basically. And that's a source of soft power, I think, that makes a lot of interest all the way through. I also describe it as a very status-driven society. And this kind of blew my mind, but 20% of everything in India is spent in 5 days or a week already. Imagine your entire lifetime, 20% of your entire asset base is spent for a wedding that you show off to other people. And that's when you start to get this kind of interesting context or differences where there's a country that has a lot of sort of opportunity, but still has the most number of billionaires in this part in Asia, has the richest people in the world, has things nothing of flying in Western musicians to attend a wedding, okay, or for an opening. But if you're thinking from that perspective, you do things because they give you a standing in society. And I think that's always an interesting thing about that. So when I'm talking about this, and Sam, please just jump in, it's an interesting opportunity to start thinking about what drives the Indian society, and what drives the Indian mentality, which is why we have the MWs, why we have big, fantastic, big fat Indian weddings. At the same point in time, you have opportunities in just getting basic infrastructure right. And then you start thinking about that. I thought it would be interesting to talk about what are the opportunities in India that, at least we are seeing as Reliance and Geo, and what are the things that are driving us to invest in the business. And rather than talking about perspective from a large Indian phenomenon, I thought we'd talk a bit about the start from a digital point of view. And I think in India, the first statement that I would say is you cannot look at averages. So in India today, there are about 300 million households. Okay. If you look 10 years out, a lot of people unfortunately don't have a great style of living today. But there are about 5.6 million households today, today in 2021, that have a Western style of living, and there is today in India about 70 million households that has, I would call probably a Southeast Asian or an Indonesian style of living, but not Southeast Asian, Indonesian style of living today, which means that they can afford to buy stuff, they have medical insurance, they can get their first car, etc. So all of a sudden you've got a world where out of 300 million people, 300 million households, 75 million households today have I would call it consuming habit. There's still unfortunately a lot of people in India, probably around 160 million households, who are still just above subsistence as well, increasing. But if you look and compare that over the next 8 years now, that group of households that are going to go from between 10 to 35,000 dollars a year will go from 70 million households to 165 million, which is a $4 trillion economy, which is what the size of Germany is today. The group of households that have a Western standard of living today, which is about 6 million households, which probably the size of Austria, will be what the entire economy of Brazil is today. And I think that's the big opportunity. The rest of the stuff to come up. And the good news is that poverty is falling, India is growing, etc. But the size of just one of our segments is really about, the size of the entire economy. And I think that's the opportunity you should start thinking about. If you try and solve for India at an average level, you'll go crazy, you won't succeed. Okay?
Goshen, if you can wrap it up, that'd be great, Goshen.
Yeah, and let me just kind of jump around a few things. Okay? Even today, India is the third largest auto market in the world, with 8% of the country owning a car. Okay? When it comes to 50-60%, it will be bigger than the US, and that should be soon. Okay? I'm just going to jump around here. If you start thinking about companies right now, okay, we've tripled the number of electric vehicles sold in the last 2-3 years. Okay, Apple Energy raised about $150 million, and they're basically selling, units at a crazy level right now. Okay. And I think that's really where the opportunity is there right now. And I thought I just talked about it. One of my friends runs a company called Melora. They do online jewelry. You order it on the internet, you go to the store, you order it, it comes to you the next day or two. They more than doubled their revenue in the last year or so. And it's really targeting that non-Western lifestyle market right now. Okay. If you think of businesses like Waypool, and again, I'm looking to the startups, and I try to go beyond the sort of e-commerce businesses. This is a company that has hit a $250 million run rate in 6 years. So it launched about 2014-15. And fundamentally, what it does is it takes the chaos of the Indian tries to automate it. And they've been able to grow their revenue 7x in 6 years, in 2 years. Okay, because their own brand and their margins grow over 3 years. In about 2.5 years. That's the scale I think we're seeing in India today. And I think that's the only thing. So, I mean, I know that I don't have a huge amount of time here, but I just point of view here, which is, I think what India did right over the last few years was, build an infrastructure system, build a digital economy, create interesting opportunities. And what you're seeing right now is businesses that are being created in every part of the economy that are solving the digital part of India. So if you're looking at opportunities in India, I would focus on which solution or which group of people you're going to solve for. And these are examples of people that are solving for rural India, solving for where I got India 2 and ultimately India 1 as well. And I think that's what I want to cover, and I'm happy to do that. And I know that a lot of people will.
Gulshan, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. Your slides are very interesting, and by the way, you're missing out all the fun here in Bangkok. So hope to see you soon, buddy. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, just to give you some more interesting information, Nikita made sure to tell me that I need to tell everybody that there's a lucky draw of about 27 lucky draws, and I think there's 2 watches that are sort of limited edition of King Rama IX that was approved by King Rama IX. So we'll be giving that out for this very special event. So without further ado, I just wanted to hand it over to the panelists to come up and give you a round discussion. Please feel free to ask any questions as you want. So with that, I'll request the organizers to bring the chairs up on the stage, and I'll hand it over to Ronan. Ronan is going to be our moderator. He'll introduce himself. He's a fantastic young gentleman, but I think I'll leave him to introduce himself on stage. So he's going to introduce all the panelists and bring them up stage while we're organizing it. All right, I'm going to take it over.
By the way, Sam, did you say that I was a fantastic Indian gentleman?
Well, when I saw that sari you were wearing this afternoon, I definitely think you're...
Well, I think we were deciding if we should wear ties or not, and I said, if you wear ties, I'll wear a sari. So everyone decided not to wear a tie, and I decided not to wear a sari.
For certain reasons, I can't put that thing on stage, but yeah, maybe I'll try it by the end of the evening, all right?
No, I might get banned from going to India. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for giving us the opportunity. As Sam said, I'm the fine Indian gentleman that has been brought up on stage to introduce the panel. Just to add some credibility, I am known as a Guju. Do you know why? Because my best friends are from Gujarat, and I am Jewish, therefore it is a Guju. So, we need some chairs. So I'd like to call up the panelists from today. First, I'll call up Anhul. We're going to have to play Pass the Mic. Can you give him a mic?
Thanks, Ronan. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and follow some very interesting presentations. Ashish, I thought His Excellency, of course. My name is Anhul Chauhan. I am CEO of a company called My Food. So, Minor Food is a part of Minor International, which is a Thailand-based multinational company, MNC. And so we take great pride in being a Thai company that has expanded abroad. Minor Food, in particular, is in 24 countries, but not in India yet. But on the flip side, we just announced Minor Hotels, a brand called Tara, opening up in Jaipur. So Anantara Jaipur is going to be operative in Q3. So very happy to hear that, and I hope that those of you visiting from India, Ashish, you should make a trip and visit our new hotel in Jaipur. So that's me, and pleasure to be here. Back to you.
Thank you. I look forward to going to Jaipur and visiting your new hotel. The promotion code that you gave me and told me not to share with everybody is... No, do not share it. Okay, because it's free. Okay. I'd like to call up on stage now Nitin. Anhul, please take a seat.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Nitin Darbari. I'm the CEO for Procter & Gamble for Thailand, Myanmar, and Laos. Very nice to meet all of you. First, can I just say it's incredibly good to meet in person after being locked up for so long. So it's really good to be here together. So Procter & Gamble, for folks who do not know, is a fast-moving consumer goods company. We are the second largest fast-moving good company in the world, largest if you exclude foods. You'd know our brands probably more: Downy, Pantene, Head & Shoulders, Gillette. So these are the brands that probably people use every day. So our job is to make sure our consumers use us every day. We have been in India since 1985 and Thailand since 1988. So the close connection between the two countries continues in that form. In fact, we've obviously invested in factories across both the countries. I speak for the Thailand business, which is, this is one of the biggest cosmetics manufacturing plants in the world. It exports to about 130 countries. 25% of all cosmetics export out of Thailand comes out of that plant. So it's a pretty big investment from our side, and obviously huge investments in India as well as part of our growth. So really pleased to be here and looking forward to hearing a lot, and I look forward to getting that same discount code. I've been bugging Anhul for that for a very long time, so look forward to that.
Thank you. And thank you for the shaving product. As you can tell, I'm very clean shaven for today. I am not hair follically challenged yet. And the third panelist is Ashish, who you've come to hear already, who dazzled us with some tremendous data points. But Ashish, maybe tell the audience, who are you?
I'm the MD and CEO for Motilal Oswal Private Wealth. I've been in financial services now for 26 years. And I'm the founder partner for this business. And I've been here for 11 years now. And it's very interesting to be here in Bangkok and look forward to a very interesting conversation. Over to you.
Thank you, thank you. And myself, besides being a Guju, my name is Ronen. I've been living in Bangkok for 16 years now. I'm in the tech space. I'm known as a mobile dinosaur, been involved in mobile technology for quite some time. And what gives me permission to come and talk about India to a group of Indians? We built a very big software business inside of India. As you know, India exports a lot of software. What we do is we actually help Indian companies to export their software via mobile applications to global audiences. So yeah, very entrenched in the India market. And yeah, so without further ado, some really interesting topics were already covered, and I don't want to be too repetitive, but we heard a lot about India growth. And I'm really curious, like over the past, we've talked about the past decade, but I want to look at the decade that we are right now in, which is termed the golden decade. What will make this decade successful, and what will sustain this growth that we've seen over the past 25 years or 75 years, as you've put it, to become an overnight success? Maybe Anhul, let's start with you.
Sure. So I'll answer in the context of my area of expertise, which is really consumer and consumer sector, and of course within that the retail, restaurant, hospitality space. So I think two things that's make an impact, and that are different from what we've heard before. We've heard the story about India earlier, and there have been a couple of false starts. So this time it's different. And I'll tell you why. The first is, the consuming class, and you saw some numbers earlier, is now sizable. And I speak from the point of view of a company that's investing into India. So when we put our own money, of course, there has to be a business case. So we see that there's now a sizable consuming class, which is willing to spend. And there's a lot of these, this group of people is large, as you saw. And compared to earlier, India used to be a very value for money market, low price points, sachets, as Nitin will know. It's now a market where people are willing to spend large amounts of money for the right experience, for the right product. So that's number one. Number two, related to that, is you can make money now. For the longest time, for people like me, and maybe perhaps many of you in the audience, it was a volume market. You get numbers, but you make your money in Thailand or make money elsewhere. So now you can make money, i.e. margins, because manufacturing costs are low and prices that you can charge are on the higher side. So I'll round that off by giving an example. We've had some visitors from India, in fact several companies visiting us to look at potential opportunities. And we find that, for those of you who know ice cream, a soft serve cone, like Dairy Queen, for example, here, you can charge more in India, our modeling shows, than you can charge in Thailand. And that means that there's a large market and people are willing to spend. And it's therefore a very, very attractive and sustainable business that can be built.
Is that because it's hotter in India?
Not anymore.
Nitin, how about you? What's your perspective on the long-term growth of this decade?
So I guess you've seen a lot of numbers. I work for a storytelling company, so let me talk it in personal terms. So I grew up I'm a product of the 70s from a birth point of view, but I grew up at a time when we saw color television emerge, basic television emerge. A lot of things were just starting to come in. And as a middle class family, there were times when you would just go out once or twice. So when I got out of the country, everything seemed to be different. Everything seemed to be richer. Everything seemed to be better coming out of India. Now as I go back, in many, many areas, I find that there are better things available there than what I find outside. In every country, every business, every service, there is always a tipping point. You grow, and at some point in time, you inflect. You inflect because things work out in your favor. There is always stuff so you'll start getting recognized in boardrooms. You'll start seeing people suddenly start to recognize you as a name. And I see that happening with India. The conversations in the boardrooms are starting to get into, we need to be there. Versus earlier it used to be, why do we need to be there? The fact that global growth is slowing, the fact that many of the companies are starting to look for where do they get the next source of growth, where did they get the next manufacturing site, where do they find the next set of users, is increasingly leading them to India. The third piece which is unsaid, which I think makes a huge difference, is the quality of people that you have is starting to create, it started off as back offices, but really they're starting to become institutions and centers where a lot of heavy services are being outsourced. And the intellectual capital that comes out of it is making a huge difference to companies in the boardrooms. A lot of us are good examples here, and a lot of the folks in this room are good examples of Indians who got exported. So not just the manufacturing that gets exported, but the Indians who got exported and made a name for themselves. because of the intellectual capital that came with it. So for me, it's a combination of those which convinces me that we're at the right tipping point that will make the difference over the next 10 years, in my opinion.
That's great. Ashish, I think you covered a lot of great data points, and obviously the story is beautiful. It's very compelling. How sustainable is this? And I even overheard already a comment or a question from one of the people in the audience. If the government changes, does the trajectory still continue, or does that change?
Good question. See, that's why I put up the slide that India is a story of a compounded past, right? If you look at the last 25 years, we've grown at a dollar growth of 9%. And I have actually seen the change in front of my eyes. And we've seen the numbers, but just few stories. I mean, I come from a town called Pune, which is close to Bombay. Earlier, whenever I used to travel from Pune to Mumbai, right, it would take anywhere between 4 to 6 hours. And it used to be very unpredictable. Just the fact that we have an expressway now, I can cover the distance in 3.5 hours. And it's getting better every decade. Similarly, with the flagging of these fast trains, right? Earlier, if it used to take 12 hours, now it's taking 6 or 7 hours. So these are small transformational changes. And Gagan, which is a very famous restaurant here in Bangkok, right? And he was talking about the demand in India. So Gagan was in India for a month. And you know how expensive a meal costs at Gagan. I couldn't get a seat. For 1 month, he was sold out, right? So if you have a quality product and service, there's no shortage of demand. Now, coming to your question on the government, of course, there is a lot of reform that this government has done. And, we are very confident that, they should come back. But the fact that India has grown at 9% in spite of all the challenges, you just look at the last 25 years and the kind of challenges the country has faced, right? We've had a war, we've had multiple government changes, we've had global financial crisis. So there is an inherent resilience in the growth. And that's why I put up the last slide and I said, even if you have political shocks or global shocks, right, it could merely delay the India story, but it doesn't derail the India story. There is a certain resilience underlying in the Indian economy. So that's what we believe.
So basically, India is holding its own now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great. And if we look at a sector that has been really robust, and that's in technology, which is an area I'm quite familiar with. This digital economy, right? We heard Gio just now talk about giving free mobile internet away. And it was interesting how the logo flipped on the other side, looks like oil, right? And oil is the foundation of data, but you must refine it to create these digital products. Anhul, when we talk about these advantages that India has compared to other markets, other countries, how do you think it can continue to capitalize on this foundation that it's already built?
Yeah. So I think the way, you saw the numbers and, incredibly large numbers of people connecting now at very low cost. I think there's two phases. My hypothesis is the first phase is really copy paste. So what you see in digital in India is largely, for the moment, copy paste. You take a business model from outside and paste it and you make money because there's demand. That's low hanging fruit. I think that's only phase one. The real growth will come from when you start solving real problems that are unique to India and build new business models. And that's when, I remember we were having this discussion earlier. When will India start exporting stuff out, right? When is the next TikTok coming out? I think that's going to happen once India starts solving for India 2 or Bharat, whatever you call it. That's going to create new businesses which will then go out because these are unique innovations which will hold their own. That's how I think of it. But you're obviously an expert on this, so
Well,
you have your own point of view.
Yeah, we are well, when I say we, I refer to India being in the digital Bharat 2.0 phase, right? And they are solving for the India problems. And I think what happened was, specifically if we look at the digital economy, where China was the biggest exporter of digital products. And when Chinese apps were actually banned from the India market, it created this huge void. And immediately that void was filled by copy-paste. But that's the greatest form of flattery, right? Is, fulfilling those voids. And I think that the pace at which they filled those voids with competing products and even better, iterating and creating better products is very interesting. And, even we look at the past World Cup, right? One of the major sponsors was Byju's, which is an Indian e-learning company, right? So really interesting. Nitin, and I think if we go back to, the consumer, where you have spent most of your career with, I think there was a comment just now that Anhu made before about buying sachets, right? And now the India consumer is buying much more than a sachet. Maybe they're already buying in bulk. So with this emerging middle class, how do companies create products and services that innovate around this new category that is forming? And how do Indian businesses best position themselves both for India, but also protect from foreign companies coming into India?
So I work for a foreign company, so both sides are welcome.
We'll scratch that and we'll say
if you think about it, let me just start with the middle class, because 20 years ago it was about 14% of the country. Today it's about 31% of the country. Another 20 years it's going to be 63% of the country. So this is a population which is going to be the size of ASEAN, if you kind of think about just scale and size of ASEAN. When you're not earning a lot, your needs are very basic. You just start with putting food on the table is really, that's what it starts. But as you start getting more money, this is where discretionary spending starts to increase. And we've seen it across the world. What happens is demands for products and services increase exponentially. And it is exponential. So, very simple example, let me take laundry as an example. Laundry starts at a very basic level with a bar. And a lot of folks in Thailand may not be aware, but bars is where it starts, and that's a very basic product that starts off. Moves to powder, moves to liquid, and now it's unit dose or single thing. You just throw it in the washing machine, and your laundry will be done. And that evolution happens or revolution happens very quickly as people get more money. And what are the triggers? You start using a liquid when you have a washing machine in your household. Why do you buy a washing machine? Because the person next to you buys a washing machine. Or it's available on a cheap EMI, or it's available on a cheap... So one of the pieces that you will see is an explosion in just the quantity of market sizes. In general, we typically say GDP into two. So the GDP is going to go 10%, 8%, you're going to see 16 to 20% market size growths. The second big thing that happens is India is not one India. The habit, and I'll take shampoo as an example, which I've worked on for the longest period of time. The oiling habits in the south are very different from the water quality and the washing habits in the north. So the product you design or the service you design for each of these locations, you need to make sure that you're designing for them. So if you're a business that's trying to win in that market and deal with this complexity, the first and foremost things, we call it in the product from our side 5 vector superiority, but it starts with knowing what differentiates you. What's different in your product and your service that's going to make you stand apart versus the millions of others? If you're going to play commoditized business, if you're going to just do the normal things, you're more likely to be, somebody's going to be cheaper than you, somebody's going to be better than you, and you're likely to be out-innovated. You've got to find what the differential is and kind of go after that. Second, you've got to find out something that is sustainable, that's going to remain with this over a period of time. And I think, for example, from a branding point of view, we've spent a lot of time getting branding because you heard trust is low. So when people start trusting a brand, they're going to stick with it for a very long point of time. So don't just go in and say unbranded product, basic product, let me just sell chemicals to people. That'll get you to a point, but the big piece is how do you move up the value chain? How do you get people to trust your brand? The more you're able to do that, the more you're able to have a differentiation, the more likely you're going to be able to succeed sustainably in the market.
I just want to add to it. See, if you look at sector after sector, it's very interesting to see how the foreign companies and Indian companies are competing and how that ecosystem is evolving. And I'll just give you some examples. If you look at the financial services sector, right, the Indian banks are much bigger than the foreign counterparts. And now the jury is out. I mean, Citibank has just bailed out of India, right? The local banks are far bigger and they are more aspirational now in India than the foreign counterparts. Similarly, even for a lot of foreign companies, and to give you two examples, for Maruti, which is a car company, right? It's a JV with Suzuki. The Indian venture is more valuable than the global parent in terms of market capitalization. And the same you see for Unilever. Hindustan Unilever's Indian franchise is more valuable. I mean, in fact, globally they are having a lot of challenges, right? So sector after sector, if you see, the Indian founders are actually doing extremely well in spite of, the entry of foreign companies. And I think what is happening here is the Indian founders are much quicker to customize the offerings at a local level. The second force, big force, is, I was just looking at Gulshan's presentation, is the internet penetration is democratizing competition. In the sense, you've seen the growth of a large retail player like Nykaa in India. It wouldn't have been possible 10 years back, right? So with the penetration of internet, branding or capital is no longer a moat. So I do believe that Indian founders, in fact, we did a study in last decade, the Indian founded companies where Indian founders had more than 26% stake grew faster than foreign companies.
What is the... I want to stay with you, Ashish, because I think you have an interesting perspective here. What is the role that India will play in this global economy?
So I think if you look at some of the forces that are at play, India is going to become a very large consumption market. That is for sure, right? Now, what that means is it's a massive opportunity for all global companies to sell their wares and services. So that's one part of the equation. So India is going to become extremely important as a market for most companies globally. Secondly, if you look at the islands of excellence in India, one is the software exports. I mean, we've seen it grow from $4 billion to $180 billion. But more important than that is the soft power that India is exerting globally. If you look at the Fortune 500 companies, I mean, I don't know the latest number, but most of the influential companies are led by Indians or people of Indian origin, right? So if you look at the soft power, apart from the fact that, we are one of the largest software services exports nation, we are trying to build capabilities in manufacturing. So India, as it goes from $3 trillion to $6 trillion and subsequently $10 trillion, will not only become a very important trading partner for most countries or economies in the world, it will definitely become a very large consumption market for most global companies. So you can't ignore India. And third and most important is the kind of soft power that India is going to exert. And like His Excellency said, that 1 out of 6 people you'll meet is going to be Indian. So the world will actually have to think how do they adapt to this new power.
Agree. In fact, I think the soft power piece beyond, exporting people as leaders, I think the cultural aspect is coming out. And my personal belief is, as we see more and more expressions of, I don't know how to put it, but Indian culture in its best form, there's something very vibrant about it, which I think is going to appeal to the world. So my fearless if you remember, we had a concept called fearless forecast. I think my fearless forecast and the next big opportunity is how to use that, or how to commercialize, if you want to call it that, the soft cultural aspects of the country, because I think there's a need for it, and it's very, very appealing to a lot of people. And you see signs you mentioned, Natu, very impressive, you already know. So, yeah, so I think that's coming up as the next frontier.
So, I think it's interesting because as I look in the audience here, I do see a lot of men, right? And we talk about Fortune 500s companies, and really the one who triggered this trend of Indian being CEOs of Fortune 500 was Indra Nooyi, right? Of PepsiCo. What is the message? Because if India is really going to, if it really will be the golden decade for India and beyond, it can't be only led by men. So what is the message that you want to share with the audience, to the fathers of daughters and the women here, about how women become more involved in the future of India?
So maybe I'll
Yes.
get back at it. So firstly, I have actually no advice to give to the women in the room or to the daughters. They are far more intelligent and they have the skills to be able to succeed by themselves. I think the change starts with us. It starts with people recognizing that the boardroom needs to reflect the audiences that we serve. I'll give a concrete example of P&G. So P&G, a long time back, called out that we need to make a difference in who the people are within the company and how, as the world's largest advertiser, we come across outside. So today, I'm extremely proud that Thailand is 50-50 at the entire organization level. At management level, it's an equal division of the workforce in terms of who we hire, how we recruit people, and it meant a lot of changes in terms of what support systems we gave. It is not the same support system that men need. And different isn't wrong. Different is needed in order to make sure that everybody is able to participate equally. It meant us taking a call to say that 50% of our advertising will have a woman director, because that's the way we will get there. And I'm incredibly proud. India, for example, 45% of our films are made by women directors. Thank you. It involved us trying to understand why, for example, our factories in India, typically it's very difficult to get people to come and work. And so it required us to set up an ecosystem where people felt safe, people felt that they were able to come in. STEM is one of the areas where there is an underrepresentation of women. It involved getting to those right places where today 45% of our factory management employees are actually women. All of this starts from somebody taking a call at the top and starting to say, I need this to change. Because just like we take the call on business and say, I need this to change, and we go put our entire energy against it, believe me, if the CEOs decide or whoever is in power decides that they want to make the change, change will happen. But it involves these small steps. We are nowhere close to getting anywhere as Procter to where we feel the journey is done. But the journey starts with the first step, and it starts with calling out where you want to go. And I think that will make the biggest difference.
Thank you for leading the way as P&G, right? It's a great example to all of us.
Can I
Please.
add on? I think in leadership, in general, no issues. First Prime Minister, you have many women leading the banks and so on and so forth. I think the real opportunity, and this is something that we can learn from Thailand, women's participation in the workforce. Nitin mentioned 50%, right? We have, I run a lot of restaurants here, and about half the people working in the restaurants are women. And they do a fantastic job. And so there's so much, untapped potential as we look at, the same sector in India. So I think we're missing a trick, certainly, across many countries, not just India, to have, more women participate in the workforce. But, just to set the record straight, I think the country itself has a fairly decent record on leadership, women leadership in leadership positions.
Well, the country manager of our company in India is a woman as well.
Just to add on to that, my wife works and she's more qualified than me, to be very honest.
Well, we knew that from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, see, I have no doubt where the power lies in Indian households. Okay, but we have to see more of it in the boardrooms, and I think it's happening. I mean, when I see my industry, right? I see a lot of representatives from the Aditya Birla Group. The head of the Aditya Birla Financial Services is a woman. She's recently taken the reins, and many, at least the financial services has a decent track record of having women at the helm of affairs. And I am reasonably confident over the next, this golden decade should be the golden decade for more diversity as well in boardrooms. And companies are becoming more and more conscious about this. I'm sure as consumer companies, they have no doubt who's going to influence the buying decision, but we have to see it, in boardrooms as well.
This is great. And just to wrap this up, I'm sure there's people out here who are quite curious how they might take advantage of this golden decade and beyond. Any advice that you can share, just a tidbit, maybe 30 seconds each of you?
I've been struck by one thing as we've explored, opportunities. I think beyond the opportunity, the financial opportunity, what's different now is the range of partners. That ecosystem, it's very different from what it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, because if you want to go in sitting here today, you will potentially want a partner, right, to begin with. And the range of partners and the quality of partners, I'm struck by the diversity and the number. It's remarkable, from private equity firms to companies looking for capital in the startup space, to mid-sized firms to startups, like I said. There is a whole range of people that one can partner with. They're professional, my experience, they're professional and they're smart. And it is certainly a route that we're certainly exploring it with, all guns blazing.
Yeah, so I think I've spoken at length about the opportunities in India. Just a couple of, things that I want to table. India is not for the short term. In the short term, it can be quite frustrating. We have multiple variables, right? But in the longer run, we've seen that it creates a lot of value for investors. So if you're coming to India, my advice is take a 5 to 10 year view, because in the shorter term, things can move around. But we've seen a lot of value getting created over a longer period of time. We've seen companies going from $20 million to $6 billion valuation. We've seen companies going from, let's say, $100 million valuation to $10 billion in front of our own eyes. So you will be surprised what can happen over the longer run. Like you said, there are opportunities in the listed space. We manage money for a lot of clients. There are opportunities in the unlisted space. The startup ecosystem is very, very vibrant today. And, despite the slowdown globally, I continue to see a lot of optimism in the startup space in India. So there are opportunities galore, but it's just that you need to find the right channel to, and have patience. You need a 5 to 10 year horizon.
So I started with a story, so appropriate that I end with a story as well. Everybody's familiar with India traffic, hopefully. Closest thing that comes to it is Bangkok traffic. So I was learning how to drive in India. So you basically get somebody, you pay somebody, they'll come drive you. They've got a car with them, they'll drive you around. And so we reached an intersection and there was traffic coming as usual from all over the place. There was a red light, but that was just a general guidance on what people should be doing. But there was traffic coming from all over. So I stopped because there was traffic coming from the right. The rule book says from the right, there should be no traffic. So you wait for those people. He says, what are you doing? Why are you stopping? I said, there's traffic coming from the right. He says, no. If you don't get in, you'll never get out. And that's true for India. It is chaotic, it is loud, it's a mess from the outside. And if you keep waiting, you'll keep waiting. That's the reality of the situation. And there are people who regretted missing China as a story many decades ago. It was loud, it was messy, it was all of the stuff that you're talking about. The best way is to get in. If you want to go start small, invest somewhere. If you want to really get your hands dirty, find something and start with a small investment, see whether that makes sense and gives you the returns that you're looking for. What it will start doing is start getting used to the India traffic that you're going to face. Once you understand that and you know how to navigate it, you will find that the returns are far greater than somebody who's waiting on the sidelines, waiting for the next available opportunity when the light's going to turn in their favor. So that would be my advice to whoever is going to start up.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been amazing. Thank you for the sharing, and thank you for everyone bearing with us. I'm sure a lot of you want to go eat now and get some drinks.
Well, thank you very much, guys. While you are all here, you know, at ITCC, this is for the current committee, the last event that we're doing. But what we did was actually try to get leadership that we have here and virtually. These companies that are represented here today represent more than $500 billion of business. So these companies combined do more than $500 billion of business. And this is what they feel about India. So firstly, I'd like to thank all the panelists, and Ronan, fantastic job. Thank you, buddy. Right? Really appreciate that you guys came and took the time. We wanted to quickly go through the thank you proceedings, but before that, I just wanted to say a very small thing from my side. I tell you, one of the reasons why we wanted to organize this conference is a difference. I mean, many of you know that besides Pizza Mania, you know, the business that I'm involved in is renewable energy, and it's water, and water is specifically in India. And Nageshji mentioned that India is having a target of like 50 gigawatts of solar every year. If you can imagine, Thailand's entire consumption is around 80 gigawatts. So just for renewable, India wants to do 50 gigawatts a year. And you know, every time I go to India for the water business that we have there, and I look at the people working in our company, the excitement, what they want to do the end of this year, what they want to achieve next year, it's just amazing feeling that you have, which is so significantly different from the business that we run here in Thailand. You know, it's an amazing feeling, and I mean, you know, Nitin couldn't have put it better, that, you know, you want to wait for the traffic or you want to go in, because otherwise you just lose your turn, right? So this is what we wanted to give you guys, an idea to have a good prospect about what really is going on in India, get you guys to think a little bit more about what's happening there. And with that, you know, from the ITCC committee, our president and all our executive directors, we thank you for the support that you've given us for all this time, and really appreciate all your participation. So with that, I would request if we could kindly invite His Excellency the Ambassador, Mr. Nageshji, to kindly come up, and we'll first start with a lucky draw for the audience who've been listening for quite some time. So Raviji, please. Nikita has accumulated something like 28 lucky draws for tonight, from hotel stays to, I don't know, a lot. So we're going to start off with the first two with His Excellency, and thereafter when we're having dinner, we'll continue with the others. So we'll just start off with that. This is particular watch that you just saw is actually a limited edition. It's about only 800 watches that were allowed by the king, the palace, to be made with the king's emblem. So there's special watches. We're going to be giving out one of those now. They have the special King Ramanai emblem there. and and we're going to now start with a lucky draw for that. Visusha Mishra.
We'd like to thank all the sponsors for tonight's event. We'll just quickly name all the sponsors. We'd like to thank Indorama,
Nemera,
Pizza Mania,
Sleep Well,
Braston Engineering,
Chaz Insurance,
Curless Car,
Mastrex,
Spice or Us.
SS Travel.
Thank you all for your sponsorship. We really appreciate very much for making the night possible.
Yes.
A round of applause for all the sponsors, please.